What is your vision about your district, and then why you decided to run for this district?
So the district is, as you say, very diverse, and it covers the area from I-25 all the way to about 15 miles east of E470. And when you get pretty far past E470, it becomes very rural. But in the area that there's a lot of population, there are an incredible diverse mix of neighborhoods and people in the district. My vision for the district is that it would go back to being kind of what I experienced, what I and my wife and my family experienced having lived there for over 20 years. An area where, it kind of felt like we were safe and our schools were great. And then in the past 20 years, it feels like there's more concern about crime and safety in our district. And the school performance, and my children have grown up during that time, so they're now in high school, and maybe we're just more aware of it now. But our school district, the Cherry Creek School District's overall performance is better than the state averages, but it's not great. And I'd really like to see our school district be better at graduating more students out of high school that are incredibly proficient at reading and writing and math and the sciences and everything, because I think that's our responsibility as a state and as fellow citizens, is to make sure the students graduating from high school are prepared for whatever it is they want to do in the world.
In this case, you are mentioning security, education, but if you have the possibility of making a priority, do you think the main needs for the people resident in your district?
Well, I think that public safety is number one, because if we're not safe, then it's hard to enjoy a good quality of life. I think that education is critically important for the segment of the population that has children going through our public education system. And we're big believers in the public education system. And it's also a prime responsibility for our state and local governments. And then the other thing, and this is my really big issue, is that we have to work harder at making our economy less burdensome for people that want to become entrepreneurs, or even as employees of other businesses to prosper as an employee, or just as a fully productive member of our district and our society.
You are living in or near to the area where there was a mass shooting in a school, in a STEM school?
That was the STEM shooting in Douglas County in 2019.
Okay, but it's near to your district or not?
Not really that near. It's quite a ways west, but.
Okay, but to what extent are you comfortable with the local legislation related with use of weapon in general? Are you agree with the Colorado state legislation regulating weapons?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm not sure what legislation you're referring to. Is there something
in general?
In general,
if you think we needed more regulation or less regulation?
Well, so let me start by saying I am a supporter of our entire U.S. Constitution, including the Second Amendment. I'm a responsible gun owner and I support responsible gun ownership. And I think that where we are today, right now, August 30th, 2022, with the amount of regulation that we have a sufficient amount of regulation to, there's an appropriate amount of regulation coming from the government to regulate the firearms industry and consumers when they go in to buy firearms. I think that the issue really comes down to, the issue of firearm safety comes down to individual responsibility, and then I do think there is a large mental health element to, for example, the incident that you're referring to at the STEM high school shooting.
The same idea about abortion. Now the issue is settled. There will be the state, in the hand of the state, the regulation or not. Are you comfortable with the regulation established in Colorado?
Well, let me say this first. Because of my gender, it's difficult for me to put myself in the shoes of a woman who would actually be facing this decision. I also have 3 daughters, and I hope that they are never in the position where abortion is their only option. And basically, I believe if we can improve the social and economic conditions for all of our residents of Colorado, all the citizens of Colorado, I think we'll really be able to address some of the underlying causes of the need for abortions. But I think that the way our state has been for the past, it's about 50 years, abortion has been legal. In other words, it has not been criminal to obtain an abortion or to be an abortion provider. And that happened in 1967 when we put a statute on the books that said it is no longer a crime to provide or receive an abortion. And then in 1984, there was an amendment to our state constitution stating that no taxpayer funds should be used for abortions. And that's basically the way our state laws have been since 1984. So I don't think that anything that happened in the Supreme Court's recent decision, nor it's called the Reproductive Health Equity Act, that was just passed in our legislature this year, had any real impact on the legal status of abortion in our state. So am I comfortable with it? You know, to be totally honest with you, I would really like to see more effort to help people who are in the condition where they feel like abortion is the only option. But I'm certainly not in a position to say that I would go, if I become a state senator, that I'd be sponsoring any legislation to outlaw abortion.
About taxation. There is in the state the TABOR regulation. Now the people who receive a check because of this legislation, and then the majority of congressmen in the Democratic side want to change, to modify, to
Right.
Amend the TABOR. What is your stance on TABOR?
I'd like to see TABOR remain in place. And I think that the purpose for TABOR is to essentially require that our state government always have a balanced budget, and that it should live within the means of the tax structure that's in place. And so I think it is a great check and balance on our state government. as a fiscal conservative, I think that our state government should operate within some constraints. What I really don't like to hear is, and this goes for my whole life, that the answer to any particular problem is to raise taxes and to have another government program. And what I've always been interested in is seeing if government, like so many people, the way our citizens, our fellow citizens, operate their own household budgets, when they have an expense, maybe it's a necessity, maybe it's an unexpected expense, maybe it's just something that they want to do. When they think about that expense, they think about how they can balance their budget so that they can take care of all the things they need to do and then accommodate this new unexpected or desired expense. They don't instantly go out and try to figure out, because it's very difficult to do this, to just increase your revenue. And so I like to have Tabor as a check and a balance on our state government, and I'm not in favor of undoing Tabor. And what I hope to do as a state senator is to be a part of the process where we prioritize our initiatives and constantly live within our means, and then remind our constituents, whether it's in State Senate District 27 or the citizens of Colorado, that's the way we're operating the state government, to stay within the tax structure and not constantly look to try and raise more sources of revenue.
You already talked about crime, but is any other idea that you have about how to reduce crime, or you have in mind supporting any legislation related with that?
The legislation that I would support is legislation that gives our law enforcement and first responders the resources that they need. One thing that I think is that we have enough laws to address the vast majority of the criminal activity that we see. We have laws against property theft. We have laws against personal crimes, assaults and batteries and that sort of thing. And I don't think we need any more laws. I think what we need is the will to enforce them. And I feel like in the last number of years, there's been a lack of support for law enforcement. And I'd like to get back to in supporting our law enforcement and making sure that they have the resources that they need. That's not to say that our law enforcement institutions are perfect, and I think we constantly need to hold them accountable and be vigilant about that. And so enforcing the laws that we have, understanding how law enforcement works, I believe that there's a little bit of an escalation in petty thefts or petty crimes that just encourage people to go on to commit other crimes. And I think we have to work together to reduce crime across the whole spectrum. And then the last thing that I think we need to address, and this may involve a shifting of the resources, is to address the mental health crises that our law enforcement and other first responders have to deal with. It won't come as a surprise to you if I was to say that traffic accidents are a big part of what the fire department has to deal with. And when I was a younger person, the fire departments primarily dealt with fires, and traffic accidents weren't as big of a part of it. But I know quite a number of people in our fire departments who say that most of their job involves traffic accidents. But I would note that in Denver there are a number of different programs where for lower level types of calls to 911, there are responses that involve non-cops. So they'll send out perhaps a paramedic and a mental health professional to be the first point of contact There's a program in Denver called the STAR program where they're being highlighted for bringing up or for initiating this program to bring mental health and medical responders to the scene to help deal with certain types of calls, rather than every 911 call turning into the first contact being a cop.